Hello, 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 my loves, and welcome back to the Horus Heresy. Now, we are on, I believe it's book 7, this one? Book 7? I do believe, book 7 or 6, can't quite remember the number. But this one's really significant. This one's really significant, Legion. Legion is one of those books within the Horus Heresy that inverts expectation so completely. It introduces elements to the lore that totally invert everything that people have assumed or that have been prescribed thus far. Legion focuses ostensibly on the Alpha Legion. Now, the Alpha Legion were up to this point. People don't seem to remember, but up to this point, the Alpha Legion, yeah, they were the sort of covert operatives of chaos. You know, they were the guerrilla operatives. They worked via sabotage and subterfuge, but they were not as mysterious. You know, that whole air of mystery around the Alpha Legion, where no one knows where they are or what they're doing or what their actual loyalties are, or whether they're sort of like covert loyalists working to burn out chaos. You just don't know. Up until this point, none of that existed. They were definitely a Chaos Legion. They definitely fought for Horus. They definitely wanted to bring down the Imperium, and that was basically it. They also, up until this point, they only had the one Primarch. They had the Primarch Alfarius, and that's it. This book changes everything. The nature of the narrative in this book is really mysterious, just like the Alpha Legion themselves. Nobody knows what the hell they're doing. They are, even within the Imperium, even within the Great Crusade at this point, they are this bizarrely mysterious Legion. Like, hardly any of the other Primarchs ever talk to Alfarius or his twin brother Omegon, which is something that's introduced in this book. There were never two Primarchs of the Alpha Legion, and you know what? There may still not be. We just don't know. There's so much mystery surrounding them. There's so much deliberate subterfuge around them. They conceal themselves within lies, within conspiracy theories. So you just don't know. You don't even know who Alfarius is, because unlike the other Primarchs who are massive and physically distinct from normal Space Marines, Alfarius and Omegon aren't. They are very strong and much smarter and much more capable than normal Space Marines, but they are the same size as them. So very often, apparently according to this book, it's not uncommon for Alfarius and Omegon to take to the field as a normal Space Marine inside a squad, or as just a normal veteran sergeant or something to that effect, and no one knows. No one is any the wiser, because they just look like Space Marines. They can even act just like Space Marines. There may not even be two of them. We just don't know. It may be part of the whole subterfuge and lies surrounding the Alpha Legion. We do not know. And this is something this book crystallizes, and I think it's brilliant myself. It really lends the Alpha Legion this really fascinating flavor. Nobody knows what they're doing. Even within the Great Crusade, at this point, before the rot of heresy has really taken root, nobody knows what they're doing. Maybe, perhaps the Emperor and Malcador have some idea of how they're operating and what they're doing, but they seem to have agents everywhere throughout the Imperium, and they don't just operate as Space Marines. They even do things like they will subject themselves to temporary surgeries so that they become the same size and scale as human beings. So they infiltrate entire cultures. And there very well may be Alpha Legion operatives wandering around who have been ensconced within cultures for generations, and nobody knows. Nobody knows. Most of this book is not from the perspective of Alpha Legionnaires. In fact, the vast majority of it isn't, because that would undermine the essential mystery of them. Instead, whereas the other books up to this point have been very intimate, they've given you a very intimate look at how legions operate, this one does the exact opposite. It takes you away from them, and they become these phantasmal figures, these semi-mythical figures that are seen through the perspectives of other characters, through the perspectives of Astra Militari Imperium or Imperial Guardsmen who work alongside them, who fight alongside them, the humans or the Imperial officials who have to work with them or try to work with them. That's the perspective you get, because they're so distant, they're so esoteric and mysterious and enigmatic, these guys. It's absolutely fascinating. But that's not the only thing. Those are not the only elements that are crystallized within this book. You have the introduction in this book of John Grammaticus, and John Grammaticus is a great character. He's a brilliant character. John Grammaticus is ostensibly a human being. He's ostensibly a human being, but he's not. He's something, again, that is introduced for the first time in this form. It's introduced in the Horus Heresy books. It is not part of the background up to this point. And those are the Perpetuals. The Perpetuals are some sort of metaphysical anomaly that occurs primarily, it seems, within humanity, although there are non-human Perpetuals too. And Perpetuals are human beings that not only have incredible capabilities, they're often psychic, they often have physical capabilities that are beyond the norm, they're often intellectually beyond the norm. They're also, as the name implies, immortal. Immortal in the sense that they can be absolutely obliterated and will be reborn again, somehow, in some way. They will be reconstituted. The Emperor is one. It's revealed in this book. John Grammaticus is one. There's quite a few, by all accounts. There are quite a few Perpetuals wandering around there in the universe. And John Grammaticus has been alive for millennia. He's a human being who has seen the rise and fall of empires and has seen the unification of Earth under the Emperor. And he claims to know the Emperor. He claims to have known him before he even was the Emperor. And there's this great scene in it where Grammaticus is talking to someone and he partially describes that, he implies that, you know, the big shining warrior, the gold-armoured flame sword, beautiful warrior, that is how the Emperor manifests in most of his imagery. And physically, if people see him, that's what he looks like. That's not what he is. Grammaticus claims that's not true. Grammaticus claims that is a very complex psychic projection that shields the reality. And you never quite understand what the reality is. You never get to see, it's never described what the reality at the heart of the Emperor is. All you know is that John Grammaticus is horrified by it. He's horrified by it, and he is terrified of it. He hates the Emperor. Absolutely loathes the Emperor. He's not on the side of chaos, and he knows that chaos exists, by the way, but he loathes the Emperor and is terrified of him. He's got this sort of paranoia that the Emperor is going to come and find him and do something awful to him. It's fascinating. That's what this book is about. It is about setting up mysteries that may never be resolved, because that's not really what it's for. It's narrative hooks for the sake of narrative hooks, and it works rather well. It's a bit more sedate than the other books. It's a bit more distant than the others, because you don't get that intimacy. You don't get those characters that you got in the previous books about previous legions. So you don't get your equivalent of Garviel Loken. You don't get your equivalent of Ezekiel Abaddon. You don't get your equivalent of Saul Tarvitz or of Nathaniel Garrow or whatever. That's not here. It's not what this book is about. It is about establishing some of the core mysteries, not only of the Alpha Legion, but of the wider universe. There's also this other thing that's set up in this book, which is really bloody weird, which is the notion that the Alpha Legion may not be Chaos Worshippers. They may not actually be traitors at all in the clean-cut sense. There's a point where members of the Alpha Legion are surreptitiously brought before this grand council of aliens, of various different alien representatives from various different species. There's Eldari there, there's Hrud, there's all sorts of different aliens. And the reason they are brought to them is because this conclave of alien farseers, of readers of the future, have seen all of the potential futures that are threading out from the heresy. And what they want is the heresy to succeed. It's so weird. What they what they claim is that if Horus wins, then chaos will saturate reality, and it will claim every world. It will claim all of physical reality. Every physical being in the universe will become a mad, lunatic, chaos-suffused abomination. But at the end of all of that, which may take millennia, chaos will destroy itself. It will burn itself out. There will be none of the free will, none of the not free will certainly, but none of the drives, none of the reflections that are necessary to feed chaos. Chaos will ultimately extinguish itself by winning, by its own victory. It will extinguish itself. It will burn itself out. The gods will have nothing to feed on, and the warp will become still. It will become stagnant. It will become empty. The universe will become lifeless. But so will the warp, and that is what they want. That is actually what they want. They want an extinction, a genocide, the like of which has never been seen. And they want the Alpha Legion to help them. And ostensibly, it seems like the Alpha Legion agree to it. Now, it's so hard to tell whether this is the truth, whether the Alpha Legion actually did join Horus because of this, because they actually want chaos to succeed, but because they want it to burn itself out. They are fighting for chaos in order to destroy chaos. That seems to be what this book sets up. However, there are later short stories and installments that seem to suggest that knowledge causes a rift in the Legion. So you have like a division between Alpharius's Alpha Legion and Omegon's Alpha Legion, and it's very difficult to know whether that's the case or whether it's subterfuge, whether it's a red herring, whether it's something designed to lead investigators or the suspicious off the right track. It's very hard to tell, but it sets up this wonderful ambiguity with the Alpha Legion that is never answered. Are they really Chaos Space Marines in the truest sense of the term? Maybe not. Maybe not, which is why, I mean, it does explain a lot of stuff. If they actually are working to burn chaos out, it would explain why in the present day, why they and the Word Bearers have such a profound enmity, and they do. The Alpha Legion and the Word Bearers hate one another, but it's never really succinctly explained why. But that would explain why, wouldn't it? Because the Word Bearers, they worship chaos, and they want its victory, but they want it to achieve a balance with the material universe, whereby there is this eternal sort of kingdom of chaos, in the same way that Christians want a kingdom of heaven. You know, the Word Bearers want a kingdom of chaos. They want it to sustain forever in perpetuity under the rule of the chaos powers. They do not want it to burn itself out. It's actually a really good book, this one. It's one of the more subtle of them. It's one of the less formulaic. This one doesn't follow a distinct formula. It's confusing, it's oblique, it's really rather strange. It sets up a lot of interesting stuff that has, I mean, I don't think much of it has even yet been resolved, to be honest. There are still narrative hooks here that may not ever get resolved. It depends on what's going on with the Alpha Legion now. Do they feel as though... Do the present-day Alpha Legion still feel as though they are working to burn chaos out? Is it not that simple anymore? Has the Legion fragmented into lots of differing philosophies, where some of them legitimately do serve chaos, where some of them are still following the old agendas of the Legion? Who knows? Who knows? But it's something that really lends the Alpha Legion this edge. It makes them so distinct from all of the other Chaos Legions and makes them fascinating. It makes them absolutely fascinating because you never know what they're up to. You never know where their true loyalties lie. You never know what they actually are trying to do. And that's wonderful. Or what they genuinely believe. You just never know. And also, the fact that the heresy failed, what does that mean? Or rather, not that it necessarily failed, but that Horus died. What does that mean? Does that mean that the Alpha Legion failed? Does that mean that this conclave of aliens failed, and that now the universe is actually doomed to the saturation of chaos? Or what? Or to just this perpetual grinding war between man, alien, and the forces of chaos? Who knows? Who knows? But this book sets out those mysteries, and it's actually really quite good, I've got to say. Love John Grammaticus. Love the Alpha Legion in it. And this, I can't remember what they're called. This conclave of aliens has a particular name. It's like the Council or the Coven or something like that. But it's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating, and you need to read this one. This is actually a linchpin book of the series. It sets up so much. Also, you need to read it because John Grammaticus and the Perpetuals appear later on, and you need to know from this book what they're doing and why. So yeah, fascinating stuff. When we come back, we'll be moving on to, is it Mechanicum next? I'm not entirely sure. It might be. I'll go and have a look. Until then, ladies and gents, bye-bye!